I'm Emma, and my brother Mike is only a year older than me. However, there were moments when it seemed as though we were in quite separate planets. Mike had been the pride and pleasure of our family since before he could walk, and I was still trying to find my place in the world. During many family get togethers, I recall sitting at our kitchen table and watching everyone swoon over Mike's most recent accomplishments. Did you hear about Michael's new app? My aunt used to cry. He's only 15, and he's already programming like a professional. My dad would give Mike the thump on the back and say things like, "This boy is going to make us all rich someday," while my mom would smile with pride. What about Mike? He would simply sit there and type on his laptop while wearing that self-assured smile. He was constantly developing something new, whether it was an innovative app concept or a groundbreaking program. His skill was undeniable. Since he could hardly reach the keyboard, he had developed an obsession with computers. He was already winning math Olympiads in middle school, while I was trying to decide which clubs to join. "Your brother's going to change the world," my dad would tell me, not even trying to hide the fact that he thought Mike was special in a way I could never be. And it wasn't just him, our entire extended family treated Mike like he was some kind of tech prodigy. They weren't entirely wrong. He did win almost every programming competition he entered, taking first or second place like it was nothing. Meanwhile, I sat in my room sketching designs in my notebook and dreaming about becoming an interior designer, not that anyone ever asked about my dreams. The family had bigger plans, all involving Mike's future success. My uncle had already started an education fund for him, and even our mom's cousin was putting money aside for his college. They saw it as an investment, convinced that Mike would become the next tech billionaire and take care of everyone who helped him along the way. "We need to make sure Michael gets into the best private college," my dad would say during family meetings, which were basically just sessions to plan Mike's future. "He's going to start his own business right after graduation. Mark my words." I tried not to be bitter about it, but it was hard, especially when I heard them discussing the thousands they were setting aside for Mike's education, while I sat there wondering if they even considered my future. Still, I held on to hope that maybe when it came time to talk about my college plans, they'd show the same enthusiasm. It was a sunny morning in May, just a month before graduation. I'd spent weeks preparing for this conversation, collecting brochures from different colleges, calculating costs, and even preparing a small presentation about scholarship opportunities. My hands were shaking as I walked into the kitchen, where Mom was making coffee and Dad was reading something on his tablet. "Mom, Dad, can we talk about something important?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's about college. I've been looking at different programs. There's this really good design program at Design." Dad interrupted, his voice sharp. "What kind of career is that supposed to be?" I took a deep breath. "Interior design." "Dad, I've actually been researching it a lot, and there are some really affordable options. Look, this college has great partial scholarships, and if I get one, you'd only need to pay." The sound of my parents' laughter cut through the air like a knife, not the warm, loving kind of laughter I'd heard so many times when Mike showed them his latest programming achievement. This was different, cold, dismissive, almost cruel. "Oh, sweetie," Mom said, shaking her head. "We need to be realistic here. We've already allocated all our education funds for Michael's college." "But I'm not asking for much," I protested. "With a scholarship, Emma?" Dad interrupted again, his tone now serious. "Let's be honest here. You're not as smart or talented as your brother. We need to invest our money where it will actually make a difference." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I've been working really hard," I protested. "My grades are good, and I've been practicing design." "Design?" Dad scoffed. "You want us to waste money on that? If you want to learn how to paint walls and glue wallpaper, you can do that for free. You don't need college for that." The tears I'd been holding back started rolling down my cheeks. I left the kitchen without another word, but I could still hear them talking about how I needed to get my head out of the clouds and accept reality. Their voices followed me up the stairs, each word another crack in my heart. But as I sat in my room, staring at my tear-stained college brochures, something inside me hardened. If my parents wouldn't help me, maybe someone else would. I thought about my grandparents' dad's parents who had always shown genuine interest in my sketches whenever we visited them. That afternoon, I took the bus to their house. Grandma opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" she asked, leading me to their cozy living room. Through tears and hiccups, I told her everything about my dreams, the college programs, and my parents' reaction. She looked through my brochures, asked questions about the programs, and even flipped through the small portfolio I brought along. When I finished talking, Grandma squeezed my hand and said something I'll never forget. "Your dreams matter, Emma. They matter just as much as anyone else's." Then she got up, walked to their bedroom, and came back with a checkbook. "I'm going to help you go to college," she said firmly. "Your grandfather and I have some savings, and we can't think of a better way to use them than investing in your future." That fall, I packed my bags and moved to a small apartment in the neighboring city. The public college I enrolled in wasn't prestigious like the ones my parents had picked out for Mike, but it had a solid design program and teachers who actually cared about their students. The following year, I heard from Grandma that Mike had started at some fancy private college across the country. "Your parents threw this big going-away party for him," she told me during one of our weekly phone calls. "Half the neighborhood was there." I hadn't spoken to my parents since the day I left. Every Sunday, though, Grandma would call and update me on the family news. It was always the same story, Mike that how he was getting top marks in all his classes, how he was already developing new apps and programs, how all the relatives couldn't stop talking about his amazing progress. While my parents were bragging about Mike's coding achievements, I was quietly building my own path. I volunteered my design services for local shelters, creating spaces that could make people feel at home, even in difficult circumstances. Each project taught me something new, and slowly but surely my portfolio grew. The nursing home project was particularly special to me. The facility had been depressing all gray walls and fluorescent lighting. I spent weeks talking to the residents, learning about their needs and preferences. I wanted to create a space that would make them feel alive, not just warehoused. "You know what I miss most?" One elderly resident named Martha told me. "I miss my garden. The colors, the light." That conversation inspired me to design a space filled with natural light, indoor plants, and comfortable seating areas that encouraged socialization. I included memory walls, where residents could display photos from their younger days, and created cozy reading nooks with adjustable lighting for aging eyes. When the project won first place in the Young Designers competition, I didn't have a single family member in the audience, except for my grandparents, who drove 2 hours to be there. "We always knew you had it in you," Grandpa whispered as he hugged me after the ceremony. Throughout my college years, I threw myself into every opportunity I could find. I designed spaces for domestic violence shelters that provided both security and dignity. I created child-friendly areas in homeless shelters that gave kids a sense of normalcy in chaos. By the time graduation rolled around, I had more than just a degree. I had a body of work that spoke for itself. Design firms took notice. Before I'd even thrown my cap in the air, I had multiple job offers on the table. I accepted a position with one of the largest design firms in the region, and suddenly, I was making the kind of money my parents probably never thought I would. After a year of working at the design firm, I decided it was time to give back to the 2 people who had believed in me when no one else did. I drove to my grandparents' house one weekend, and as I walked through their familiar rooms, I saw them with new eyes. The wallpaper was peeling in corners, the kitchen cabinets were worn out, and the bathroom hadn't been updated since the 1970s. "Grandma," I said during dinner, "how would you feel about letting me renovate your house? You won't pay a cent. This is my gift to you for everything you've done for me." It took some convincing, but they finally agreed. I spent weeks developing the perfect design, incorporating elements from their past while bringing the space into the present. I wanted to preserve the soul of their home while making it more comfortable and functional for them. The renovation took 3 months. I hired the best contractors I knew and supervised every detail. We replaced the ancient heating system, installed new windows, and completely redesigned the kitchen. I chose warm colors that reminded me of the cookies Grandma used to bake and installed soft lighting that wouldn't strain their aging eyes. When it was finished, Grandma couldn't stop crying. The next day, she was on the phone nonstop, inviting everyone she knew to come see the house. I sat in the corner of the living room, watching as she led groups of her friends through each room. "My Emma did all this," she'd say, her voice full of pride. "She designed everything. Didn't I tell you she was talented?" It was the kind of pride I'd always wished to hear in my parents' voices. But while I was busy making my grandparents' dreams come true, my brother's dream was about to turn into a nightmare. The news came through Grandma, as usual. Mike had apparently hit it big. He developed some revolutionary app and sold it to a major tech company for millions. The family was ecstatic. Dad was giving interviews to local papers about his genius son, and relatives were already asking Mike for investment advice. But their celebration didn't last long. Just a few months after the sale, everything fell apart. Mike's former college classmate filed the lawsuit, claiming the app had been his idea and he had proof. Detailed documentation showed that not only had the concept been his, but he'd written most of the crucial code as well. Mike had somehow gotten hold of it all and passed it off as his own work. The evidence was overwhelming: emails, early drafts of the code, witness conversations. It all pointed to Mike's theft. The court case was brutal and quick. Not only did Mike have to return all the money from the sale, but he was also ordered to pay over $2 million in damages for intellectual property theft. The family went into panic mode. At first, relatives talked about pulling their resources to help him, just like they'd pull their money for his education. But when they realized the full amount, reality hit hard. One by one, they backed away. Even his most devoted supporters couldn't justify risking their life savings to bail him out of this mess. I was in my office one Tuesday morning, reviewing designs for a new boutique hotel project, when my secretary buzzed in. "Miss Thompson, your parents are here to see you." I nearly dropped my coffee. After years of silence, they'd actually tracked me down at my design studio. I'd opened 6 months earlier after building up enough clients and confidence to strike out on my own. "Send them in," I said, my stomach tightening into knots. They looked older than I remembered, more worn down. Mom's hair had gone completely gray, and Dad's confident swagger had been replaced by a slight stoop. They stood awkwardly in my office, taking in the awards on the walls and the large drafting table covered in blueprints. "Emma," Dad started, his voice lacking its usual authority. "You've done well for yourself." I waited silently. I knew they hadn't come to admire my success. "We need your help," Mom blurted out, wringing her hands. "It's about Michael." Dad cleared his throat. "My business. It's not doing well. I've been taking out loans to help with Michael's legal fees. But we're drowning here, Emma. We need money." "Let me get this straight," I said, leaning forward in my chair. "When I needed help with college tuition, you laughed at me. You said I wasn't worth investing in. You said I could learn to paint walls for free. And now you want me to hand over my hard-earned money to fix Michael's mistakes." "That was different," Mom protested. "We were just trying to be realistic about your prospects." "No," I cut her off. "You were wrong about my prospects, and you were wrong about Michael's. I'm not giving you any money." They left my office in a huff, but that wasn't the end of it. The next day, my phone started buzzing with notifications. My parents had taken their grievances to social media, painting me as an ungrateful daughter who'd abandoned her family in their time of need. The family divided into camps. Aunt Sarah posted a long message about how children should always help their parents, no matter what. Uncle James agreed, saying family loyalty should trump past grievances. But others stood up for me. Cousin Rachel pointed out how my parents had ignored me for years while lavishing everything on Michael. My mother's sister wrote about how she'd watched them dismiss my dreams while building Michael's pedestal higher and higher. The debate raged on in comments and posts, with relatives taking sides and arguing about family obligations versus personal responsibility. Some called me heartless, others called me brave. Through it all, I kept working. I had 3 major projects in development, a team of designers to manage, and clients who counted on me. I didn't have time to engage in social media drama. Grandma called me one morning, her voice filled with that particular excitement she got when she was up to something. "Emma, dear, I need your professional opinion on something," she said. "My old friend has this apartment in one of those converted industrial buildings downtown. It hasn't been touched in nearly 50 years, and I thought maybe you'd like to take a look." I was intrigued. I'd never worked on a conversion project before, and the idea of transforming an old industrial space excited me. The next day, Grandma took me to see the apartment. The building was gorgeous, all exposed brick and tall windows. Inside the apartment, though, time had stood still. The wallpaper was straight out of the 1970s. The kitchen still had its original appliances, and the bathroom. Well, let's just say avocado green wasn't my first choice for tiles. But I could see the potential. The ceiling heights were amazing, and those windows. The light streamed in through massive industrial panes, creating patterns on the worn wooden floors. My mind was already racing with possibilities. "This is incredible," I told Grandma, sketching quick ideas in my notebook. "The bones of this place are fantastic. I want to do this project for free. Consider it a thank you to your friend for letting me work on such an amazing space." I threw myself into the project with everything I had. I preserved the industrial character while creating a modern living space. We kept the exposed brick walls, but added warmth with wooden elements. The original factory windows were carefully restored, and I designed custom furniture that would complement the industrial aesthetic while providing comfort. The kitchen became a showpiece, with concrete countertops and sleek cabinets that respected the building's history. I transformed the ancient bathroom into a spa-like retreat, replacing that avocado green with clean lines and natural stone. When the renovation was complete, Grandma and Grandpa insisted on seeing it first. They walked through each room slowly, taking everything in. Then Grandma turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Emma, sweetheart, we have a confession to make," she said, reaching for Grandpa's hand. "This apartment, it's not my friend's, it's ours. Or rather, it was ours. Our first home together. And now it's yours." I stood there frozen. "We bought it when we first got married," Grandpa explained, his voice thick with emotion. "Back then, this whole area was industrial factories everywhere. Workers coming and going. We were young, and it was all we could afford. But we were happy here. When the factories closed down, everyone thought this area was finished," Grandma continued. "But look at it now. It's one of the most desirable neighborhoods in the city. We kept this place all these years, waiting for the right moment. And now it's yours. Sweetheart, you've made it beautiful again." I burst into tears and threw my arms around them both. That evening, after they left, I sat in my new living room, still in disbelief. I took a photo of the transformed space and shared it on social media, along with the story of my grandparents' incredible gift. The peace I'd found in my new home didn't last long. Dad showed up at my door one evening, uninvited and agitated. "Do you have any idea how much this place is worth?" he demanded, pushing past me into the living room. "We could sell it and solve all our problems. Michael needs help with his debts, and I've got creditors breathing down my neck." I stood my ground. "This is my home, Dad. Grandma and Grandpa gave it to me. It's not for sale." "Don't be selfish," he shouted. "This is prime real estate. Your brother is drowning in debt, and you're sitting here in a gold mine." Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Grandma. Somehow, she'd known grandmothers always know. "Put your father on the phone," she said firmly. I handed him the phone and watched his face change as she spoke. "Listen to me very carefully." I could hear her stern voice through the speaker. "That apartment is Emma's. I gave it to her, and that's final. If you keep harassing her about this, you'll have me to deal with." Dad left that day, chased by his mother's words. For a while, everything was quiet. Then life dealt me the cruelest blow. Grandma passed away suddenly in her sleep. Before I could even begin to process that loss, Grandpa followed her just 2 weeks later. Everyone said he died of a broken heart. The reading was held a week later, and everything was clear. The apartment was officially mine, while Dad inherited their old house. The difference in value was significant. The gentrification of my neighborhood had made my apartment worth several times more than their house. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Less than 2 months after we buried my grandparents, I was served with legal papers. Dad was suing me, claiming I had manipulated Grandma into giving me the apartment. The lawsuit alleged that I had exercised undue influence over an elderly woman and fraudulently obtained property through deception. I got to see my relatives. Yes, I do hear things. We live in a small city. According to friends, Michael is still unable to get employment in the computer sector since no one would trust him with his projects and his image is too tarnished. The debt still looms large over him. My parents had to sell the house they inherited from Grandma and Grandpa before selling their own. Together, the three of them now reside in a modest suburban apartment. I'd often imagine how things could have turned out differently if they had given equal belief to both of their children as I passed by their new neighborhood. They continue to propagate their version of what happened to me to anybody who would listen. They accuse me of being greedy. They claim that I picked an apartment above my family and left them when they were in need. However, I am aware of the reality. I decided to cherish the memories of the family members who genuinely believed in me rather than select an apartment over them. Grandma and Grandpa come to mind every morning when I wake up and see the sunshine coming through those enormous industrial windows. I consider how they supported my dreams rather than discounting them and how they recognized something in me when others didn't. Right now, my design business is doing quite well. We're working on projects around the city, and I've added more designers to my firm. We were awarded a significant contract last month to renovate a historic downtown hotel. In particular, they were looking for someone who knew how to combine modern comforts with old buildings. I'm Barbara, and I've been interested in the world around me since I can remember. I like to gather leaves, rocks, and anything else I could look at with a small magnifying glass I obtained from a cereal box, while my sister Laura played with dolls and dreamed of being a princess. "Mom, why do leaves change color in fall?" I would inquire while displaying a crimson maple leaf I had discovered. "Ask Barbara, your teacher." Without truly glancing at me, she would say, "I'm busy helping Laura with her dance costume." Such a response was typical. I had a lot of questions about science and environment, but nobody at home appeared to be really interested. I remember one day when I was 7. I was sitting at the kitchen table with different things from around the house. I was mixing baking soda with other liquids, excited to see what would happen. "What on earth are you doing?" my mom said loudly, pulling me out of my thoughts. "Look at this mess. Clean it up now. Your sister's friends are coming for her birthday party, and I need the kitchen." Laura's birthday parties were always huge. There were entertainers, people in big cartoon costumes, and lots of guests. My birthdays were quiet, just my grandparents and a small cake. The difference was pretty clear. "Here's your birthday present, sweetheart," my dad would say, handing me another science book. I liked those books a lot, but watching Laura open piles of toys at her parties made me feel like I didn't matter as much. The one place I felt truly happy was at my grandparents' house, my dad's parents. They made me feel special. Every weekend or school break, I'd stay with them. "Tell me what you learned this week, little scientist," Grandpa would say, his eyes shining with interest. I would excitedly tell my grandparents everything I had discovered. "Laura never came with me. They're so boring," she would say. "Besides, Mom and Dad are taking me to the new theme park this weekend." I would watch from the window as they drove away, trying not to feel hurt. One day I asked, "Why can't I go too?" "Oh, honey," Mom said, patting my head without really paying attention, you wouldn't enjoy it. You probably want to study how the rides work instead of just having fun. That was how things always were. Laura was the one who seemed normal, the kind of daughter they expected. I was the one who asked too many questions, liked microscopes more than makeup, and just didn't quite fit in. Things began to change when I started middle school. My science teacher, Mrs. Jacob, was the first person besides my grandparents who truly understood me. Mr. and Mrs. Bryan, your daughter has amazing potential, she told my parents during a parent-teacher meeting. I was sitting just outside, but I could hear every word. I've never seen a student understand science so naturally. We should think about moving Barbara into the gifted program. Gifted program, Mom said, using that same tone I knew too well. That sounds complicated. She's fine where she is, and we have to think about Laura. It wouldn't be fair to treat Barbara differently. I sat there, heart sinking. I knew they'd say no. They always said no when it came to me. But then Grandma found out. The next day, she walked into my school like she was ready to go to battle. I'll never forget how strong and calm she looked, standing in the principal's office, she said firmly. My granddaughter will take those tests. She deserves every chance to succeed. I don't care what her parents say. But Mrs. Bryan, we need her parents' permission, the principal said. I'll deal with my son and his wife, she replied. You just make sure Barbara gets her chance. And somehow, she made it happen. After a week of hard talks, and I think a bit of money from my grandparents, my parents finally agreed to let me take the tests. I passed every one of them with top scores. Suddenly, my world became much bigger. The gifted program gave me chances I never imagined. Science competitions, academic contests, and research events. I loved every part of it. For the first time, I was around people who were like me, people who loved learning, who got excited about the same things I did. I won my first international science competition with a project about sustainable ecosystems. Then I won another and another. Where should we put this one? Grandpa would ask every time, holding another trophy or medal I brought home. Just put it in the box, I'd say, pulling out my special cardboard box from under the bed. I never showed off my awards. I didn't want to seem like I was bragging, and deep down, I knew my parents didn't really like seeing them. Laura, of course, had her own opinion. Nobody likes a know-it-all, she'd say with a sneer. But then she'd turn around and ask, hey, can you help me with my science homework? Or maybe just do it for me. Laura, that's cheating, I'd protest. Barbara, help your sister right now, Mom would snap. Family helps family. So I did Laura's homework, feeling like a fake. I wanted to say no, but I was too scared to go against them. It became a regular thing. Laura would ask, my parents would pressure me, and I'd give in. Sometimes, I'd overhear my parents talking when they thought I wasn't listening. Their quiet voices would float up the stairs while I sat in my room, working on my chemistry set or reading the latest science article. I just don't get it, Mom would say. No one in our family is like this. Maybe she was switched at birth, Dad would joke. But he didn't sound like he was completely joking. That hurt more than if he'd said it seriously. One night, after I won another science competition, I heard Dad talking to Laura in his study. She was upset about her bad grades. It's not fair that she's so smart, Laura complained. Listen, sweetheart, Dad said gently. The weak need more support. That's why we focus on you, Barbara. She'll be fine on her own. I leaned against the wall, trying not to cry. They really believed that because I was good at something, I didn't need love or care. It was like they were using that as an excuse to ignore me. At school, I was the quiet, strange girl who spent her lunch breaks in the science lab instead of the cafeteria. Sure, some kids came to me for help with homework, but real friends? I didn't have many. My grandparents were my safe place. They were always there for me. They'd listen for hours as I talked about my experiments or new ideas. They never made me feel weird or wrong. Look what I found for you, Grandpa would say, holding up a science magazine or a new tool for my experiments. I thought this might interest you. Even with their love, though, I still felt a deep emptiness inside. I wanted my parents' support too. At school events, I'd watch other families hugging their kids, siblings cheering for each other, and I'd feel a sharp pain in my chest. Then came the news that changed everything. I was graduating early. At just 17, I had finished all my high school classes and got a full scholarship to one of the best universities in the country. The day I left for university felt like I could finally breathe. The campus was full of energy, and for the first time, I didn't feel like the odd one out. In my advanced chemistry class, I met Julie and Larry. They got just as excited about molecules as I did. For the first time, I had real friends who understood me. We spent hours in the lab, sharing ideas, getting excited about experiments that most people wouldn't care about. I felt like I belonged. But even though I was happy, part of me still wanted my family to be proud of me. I called home every week, hoping for more than just short, barbed replies. "Yes, Barbara, that's nice," Mom would say when I tried to talk about my research. Then she'd quickly change the subject. "Oh, did you hear about Laura's new job? She's working at that fancy store downtown." I didn't know it then, but my time at university was the quiet before the storm. It started during one of my usual calls home. I was deep into my second semester, busy with my research, when I heard Mom talking. "I don't think she knew I could still hear her. And with your father's condition getting worse," she said to Dad. My heart jumped. "What about Grandpa?" I asked, cutting in quickly. I was scared. There was a pause too long to feel normal. "Oh, Barbara, I didn't know you were still there," Mom said, trying to sound casual. "It's nothing serious, just a small health problem. He's already getting better." "I'm coming home," I said right away. I was already figuring out the fastest way to get there. "I can be there by tomorrow morning." "No, don't be silly," Mom said sharply. "You need to focus on school. Laura is helping them. Everything's fine." Something about her voice felt wrong, but I told myself I was just overthinking it. Still, I called Grandma right after. "Oh yes, dear," Grandma said. Her voice didn't sound like usual. It was distant. "Laura's been such a help. She visits often and checks on your grandfather." Laura, the same sister who always said visiting our grandparents was boring. Something didn't feel right. 3 weeks later, I was standing at my grandparents' front door. My heart was racing. But instead of Grandma greeting me, Laura opened the door. She looked surprised, but it didn't seem real. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her face calm but cold. "I came to see Grandpa and Grandma." "How is he?" I asked. "No one's home," Laura said quickly, too quickly. "They're out." I asked, "But Grandpa is sick. Where would they go?" "I don't know, Barbara." "Just go away," she snapped, starting to close the door. "Wait," I said, putting my foot in the doorway. "Let me come in and wait for them." "No one's home," she repeated, pushing the door hard against my foot. "God, you're so annoying. Just leave." Confused and hurt, I tried calling Grandma. It went straight to voicemail. That wasn't like her at all. She always kept her phone on for me. With nowhere else to go, I went to my parents' house, hoping for answers. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen when I got there. "What are you doing home?" Dad asked, clearly annoyed. "I came to see Grandpa and Grandma, but they weren't there," I said. "Laura wouldn't let me in." "Oh, honey," Mom said, cutting me off and sharing a quick look with Dad. "We were going to tell you. Your grandparents are in a nursing home now." It felt like the world shifted under my feet. "What? Why didn't anyone tell me?" "It was a quick decision," Dad said smoothly. "They needed special care. It's better this way." "Which nursing home?" "I want to visit them." "They're under quarantine," Mom said quickly. "No visitors allowed. Maybe next time." I went back to university, but something didn't feel right. I tried to focus on my lab work. But my thoughts kept going back to that strange afternoon, Laura blocking the door, my parents' odd explanations. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Wednesday morning. I was in the middle of an experiment when my phone lit up with Mom's number. The bright lab lights buzzed overhead as my heart began to race. I had a bad feeling. "Barbara," Mom said, her voice flat and dull. Your grandfather passed away last night. The test tube in my hand slipped and shattered on the lab floor. The sound echoed loudly, like a gunshot. What? No, my voice cracked. When's the funeral? Friday, 3 o'clock p.m. Don't be late, she said. The way she said it felt cold, almost practiced. I didn't even clean up the broken glass. I just left the lab, my heart full of pain and confusion. My grandfather, the one person who truly believed in me, was gone. I hadn't even gotten to say goodbye. I got the first flight I could find. The whole trip, I fought back tears as memories of him filled my mind. At 2:15 p.m. on Friday, I arrived at the church. The empty parking lot was the first sign that something was very wrong. My footsteps echoed in the quiet building as I walked inside. I walked toward the church entrance, feeling more nervous with every step. Inside, a janitor was cleaning the floor. The Brian funeral. He asked when I mentioned it, looking up from his work. That ended hours ago. They held it at 11 a.m. It felt like someone had punched me. The room started spinning, and I grabbed onto a nearby bench to stay upright. I quickly pulled out my phone and called my parents. "Oh, Barbara," Mom said, sounding disappointed. "You must have gotten the time wrong. We clearly said 11 a.m. "No," I said, my voice shaking as I held the phone with trembling hands. "You said 3 o'clock p.m. I wrote it down. I know what I heard." "Your grandmother is still in the nursing home," Dad cut in. "She doesn't want to see you right now. She's very upset that you missed the funeral." I told them I was going back to university, but instead, I found myself driving to my grandparents' house. I needed answers. I needed something to help me make sense of this nightmare. Everything on the street looked the same: the old oak tree, the neat garden, the wind chimes Grandma loved. My hands were shaking as I rang the doorbell. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened, and there stood Grandma, the same Grandma they said was in a nursing home. "Grandma?" I said, stepping forward to hug her, feeling so relieved to see her face. But she stepped back. The look in her eyes stopped me cold. Her face was hard and distant, like she was looking at a stranger. "So now you decide to show up?" she said, her voice cold, nothing like the loving voice I grew up with. "Grandma, what's going on?" I asked. "They told me you were in a nursing home." "Don't," she said, raising her hand, and it felt like she had slapped me. "Your grandfather called you again and again on his deathbed. He kept asking for you. He wanted to say goodbye to his little scientist, but you didn't come. You didn't answer. How could you be so heartless?" "Barbara, please," I said, my voice shaking. "Let me see the number he was calling. I need to understand." She disappeared inside the house and came back a moment later with a small notepad. Her hands trembled as she held it out to me. The number was written in Grandpa's handwriting. "That's not my number," I whispered. I stared at the unfamiliar phone number, my voice barely a whisper. I'd had the same number since high school. "They gave you a fake number," Grandma said softly. "What do you mean, a fake number?" Grandma's stern face began to change. She looked confused and hurt. "Your parents told us you changed your number when you went to university. They said you didn't want to stay in touch with us anymore." Suddenly, everything started to make sense. "Grandma, I came here during break. Laura was here. She wouldn't let me in. She said no one was home. Then Mom and Dad told me you and Grandpa were in a nursing home." Grandma's face went pale. "A nursing home? We never?" "No," she said softly. "Laura and your parents told us that you were too busy with your new life at university. They said you were embarrassed by us, that we weren't smart or fancy enough for you anymore. They said that." My knees felt weak. How could they? "Grandma, they told me the funeral was at 3 o'clock p.m. today. But when I got to the church, it was already over. They said I got the time wrong, but I didn't. I would never." "The funeral was at 11 o'clock a.m., Grandma said slowly, her eyes starting to fill with tears. "Your parents stood there and told everyone that you didn't care enough to come. They said they were ashamed of you. Laura cried and said she tried everything to reach you. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I fell into Grandma's arms and broke down crying. She held me tightly as we sat together on the front porch. Everything we had lost because of lies came pouring out. He died thinking I didn't love him, I sobbed. Grandpa thought I didn't care. Grandma gently stroked my hair, like she used to when I was little, her own tears falling too. We know the truth now, sweetheart. We know. After we cried together and wiped our tears, Grandma stood up with a serious look on her face. She picked up the phone and began to dial. Her hands shook a little, but her voice was steady. Rachel, yes, it's me. I need you, Paul, and Laura to come over right away. There are some important papers we need to talk about. No, it can't wait. She hung up the phone. They'll be here in an hour, she told me. I told them we have legal papers to go over. The lawyer is on his way too. When the doorbell rang, Grandma squeezed my hand. Stay in the kitchen until I call you. I heard them come in Mom's fake laugh, Dad's stiff greeting, and Laura's bored sigh. Then I heard Grandma's voice, sharper than I'd ever heard it. Please, everyone, take a seat. Mr. Tyler is here to read Henry's will. That was my cue. I walked into the living room just as the lawyer opened his briefcase. The looks on their faces were unforgettable. Mom's perfect smile froze, Dad's face turned pale, and Laura's mouth dropped open in shock. Mr. Tyler cleared his throat and began reading. I, Henry Bryan, being of sound mind, declare this to be my last will and testament. The room was completely quiet except for the sound of papers being turned. First, the house was left to Grandma, along with a good amount of money to take care of her in the home. Then came the part that made Laura's face turn red with anger. To my granddaughter, Barbara Bryan, I leave my newly built laboratory at 1380 Pine Street, fully equipped and ready for her research. All permits and paperwork have already been completed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Grandpa had built me a lab, my very own place to do research. The rest of my estate, Mr. Tyler continued, is to be split equally between my granddaughters, Barbara and Laura Bryan. Laura pushed her chair back and stood up fast, her face full of rage, but Grandma held up her hand. There's more, she said, pulling out a letter. Your grandfather wanted this to be read too. She began reading in a strong, steady voice. My dear family, I've watched over the years as favoritism has hurt this family. To my son and daughter-in-law, your treatment of your daughters has been unfair. Every child deserves the same love and support. Stop, Laura screamed, jumping to her feet. This is ridiculous. Why should she get anything? Do you know what I had to do? All those hours sitting with that boring old man, pretending to care. Mom tried to quiet her, but Laura kept going. You promised. She shouted at our parents. You said if I played nice, if I visited him and acted like the perfect granddaughter, everything would be mine. You made me beg a dying man. Their lies and manipulation were out in the open now, ugly and clear. And now what? Laura shouted, her voice getting louder. She gets a whole lab, and I just did half the money? No, give me the house. She doesn't need both. Let her have her stupid lab. I sat there in silence, watching my sister's real self come out at last. The fake, perfect image was gone, replaced by something angry and bitter. Then Mom broke the silence. Barbara, she said, you heard your sister. Be reasonable. Do you know how much we've spent on you? All those science camps, all those competitions. I almost laughed. You didn't pay for any of that, I said. Grandma and Grandpa did. That's not the point, Mom snapped. Family means sacrifice. If you really want to honor your grandfather's memory, you'll give your share to Laura. She needs it more than you. Honor his memory? Grandma's voice cut through the room like a knife. She stood up, still holding Grandpa's letter. Let me remind you what Henry had to say about this family, she said, then began reading again. To my son and his wife, your clear favoritism has poisoned this family. The way you treated Barbara was emotional abuse, and you turned Laura into a spoiled, selfish child. How dared you? Laura shouted. No, how dare you? Grandma's voice was louder than I'd ever heard it. You all lied to a dying man. You kept his granddaughter from saying goodbye, and now you want to talk about family and sacrifice. She walked to the door and threw it open. Get out, all of you. And Laura, I'm sorry Henry left you anything. You're nothing but a selfish girl who learned from selfish parents. They left in a storm of angry words and slammed doors. When they were gone, the house was strangely quiet. That was 6 years ago. Today, I run my own research lab, the one Grandpa built for me. It's everything I ever dreamed of and more. Sometimes, when I'm working late at night, I feel like he's there with me, proud and smiling. Grandma visits often. We have dinner together every Saturday, and she loves walking through the lab, asking about my latest projects. She even started taking science classes at the local community college. She says it helps her understand my work, but I think she just wants to feel close to the passion Grandpa and I shared. Since that day, I haven't spoken to Laura or my parents. I occasionally see their names appear in my email or on my phone. I keep the communications closed. I just remove them. I've made my decision, and they've made theirs. I discovered an old picture of Grandpa in one of his books the other day. As I, much younger, peered through a magnifying lens, he was in the garden, pointing at something. His writing on the back said, "My little scientist will change the world someday." I now have the picture on my desk. I've discovered that family isn't always about blood. Those that trust in you, encourage your goals, and love you for who you are, not because of who you are, but because of it, are your true family.